Paul George pushed pretty tough or pretty hard for Russell Westbrook. That reporting is undisputed, and he's publicly done the same thing when they were talking about the Russ possibility. I just wonder if you're Paul George, and you did this Clippers thing with Kawhi Leonard, who is by all accounts the poster boy for load management, a guy who physically has struggled last couple of years just to stay on the floor. It feels a little bit to me like, perhaps Paul reached the point where, his sense was, listen, everybody, like, I'm not down on what we're doing here. I understand the reasons, but I've spent a lot of time playing out there without a co-star. And Russ, of course, is the guy that he was with most recently in Oklahoma City, a guy that he has been rocking with before and after that experience, and a guy that he speaks highly of, thinks highly of, is very close with. Excuse me. And it feels a little bit like, Paul might have just wanted, like, you just got to give me that backup guy. I got to have another guy. And that might have been part of the mentality. And before you kind of give your 2 cents, the other context that got my attention here the other day was Paul visited with JJ Redick on his fantastic Old Man and the Three podcast. And on that pod, talked about load management in the kind of way that you would not expect a Clippers star to talk about load management, which is to say, and I'm paraphrasing, that he basically said, we don't practice. He's talking NBA wide. We don't practice anymore. He doesn't think that's the best thing for players. That it essentially you get softer because you're not competing all the time. He talked about his Pacers days, his experience with Frank Vogel, and how it was you play hard on game day, you practice hard on practice day. And to hear that from Paul, and then just to kind of try to unpack it all, considering that it does run counter to what the perception of the Clippers ethos is interesting to me, and maybe might play a small part in explaining why he wanted Russ on this team.
Yeah, I mean, because Russ is going to bring it every day. Like,
Yeah,
that is the one thing, and Russ is highly respected by players,
right.
league wide for that, exact thing. I mean, I don't know how many times I can remember back in my early days covering the Thunder, getting to the arena like 2.5 hours early, especially, young reporter, like, gonna get there really early today. And it's like Russell Westbrook is out there 2.5 hours, empty arena, like going through a very, stringent routine. I mean, he's
Right.
OCD about it. So he has a high level of like professional respect about the way he goes about his business. And yeah, maybe there's just a belief that, he enters the fray and brings a level of seriousness and toughness to the situation. Now, the way his offensive game has fallen, I just think presents strategic trouble for them, as I was mentioning. It kind of blocks Terrence Mann's spot in the starting lineup and maybe in the rotation at times. But the truth is, if the Clippers do make the playoffs, and I still think they're in fine position in a West that, yes, it's packed up, but also, like, a lot of these teams are just going to keep losing because they've been losing all season. So I do think the Clippers will make the playoffs. And by the time they get to the playoffs, they'll have enough of a Russell Westbrook sample to decide, I think, do you bring him off the bench? Do you have him in a small role? Is he still on the team? It's a very low stakes contract they have him on, a minimum prorated deal that at any point, if it really went south, you could cut him. I'm not saying they're going to do that, but it's an option. So maybe by then, they'll have found the correct role for him, and maybe he plays him. They came back and beat the Grizzlies yesterday, and Paul George was awesome, had 42. Russell Westbrook had a real, like, power and one, and kind of screamed towards the baseline. Ballmer was over there going
Man, he
crazy.
has spit coming out his mouth.
Yeah,
He dropping a
yeah.
mother effer. That was something.